on the concept of what chaos can bring to the table. And so over in the chat box, as I tell you about a situation I had with chaos, share something that was chaotic for you. What does chaos look like to you? So just plop it in there and we can share thoughts and ideas. And if you have questions, we're gonna do those at the end. You can plop them in that chat box as well. Okay, so this situation for me was quite interesting as far as chaos goes on in my life on a large scale. So when I was in my 20s, I moved to China with my husband, and I'm got to get my slides going.
I think you're going to have to ask.
Oh, right.
Because I went out. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, let me request that.
There you go.
Okay, thank you. All right, good to start. All right, so here I am. We literally get off the boat and I walk in there. We walk into the mainland part of China, and every sense that I have is inundated with the sounds. The sounds were overwhelming because, you know, the tools they used, the language was totally different. And then the smells were otherworldly and obviously other nation, right? And visually it was.
Sorry. Hold on.
There.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm not sure. Now, just to summarize that, all my senses were just assaulted. And I was excited to be there, of course, but I was, of course, a little nervous. And we were getting settled. And early on, I was walking down this lone sidewalk, and I looked up. I was in my own thoughts, you know, just trying to absorb this, to me, this chaotic situation. And that was a reflection internally, too. It just seemed like I'm trying to process this new environment. And I look up, and there is literally a wall of bikes coming at me, much like this picture. Just, and I think when I say a wall, like a seawall, or sometimes I think of it like those fish who all come together and move in a, you know, that sparkle. It was like that as well, coming at me. And I was like, oh my God, they're not kidding about, you know, Chinese people ride bicycles. And as they came up to me, I was right at a spot where there was an intersection, like forks in the, not just a cross, but going different ways. And as soon as the bikes hit that intersection, bikes went everywhere. They just dispersed in all directions. In my eyes, I'm just thinking in my head, oh my gosh, there's going to be a accident. Someone's going to get hurt. There's got to be a better way. This is mayhem. And on these bikes were whole families. So the dad riding with mom sad saddled holding the baby, or the mom riding with the baby in the bamboo basket in the front. And I was just thinking, oh, someone's going to get hurt here. And I just watched it. And as it kind of thinned out, I just kept going, and I went home. And then a couple weeks later, I needed a bike to get to and fro work. And so I got a bike, and I found myself then in this wall of this sea of bicycles. And once I did that, I started to get a feel for the culture. And I realized that before I was on my bike, I was just thinking of all the ways they could be doing things better and more efficiently and with more safety, and communicate more clearly, in the sense that it just seemed like chaos. So as I'm riding my bike in this group of people going to and from work, of course, I'm an anomaly, and they find that interesting. And I find that interesting. But as far as this, when it has to converge and I need to go a certain way, I'm the one almost causing all the accidents. I'm the one who's scraping my knee. No one else is. It's like there's this sixth sense of when you're raised in that you have this sense of space, and everyone is just going. And I started to feel this rhythm, and it started to loosen something up in me where I could then be more open to the culture and more comfortable there and more comfortable communicating. And that shift in me made my whole experience this beautiful blossoming for myself, and for the friendships I developed. Okay, hold on. I got it. Let me just get over here. Hold on. Okay, I want to be right here. Okay. And it's interesting because as I grew there, what I realized that there wasn't a chaos. The chaos was in me, and how I approached that situation. And and it's interesting because I was talking to one of my national friends, and she was helping me learn the language. And I said, you know, it's really interesting. Is it feels like to me when you guys talk to each other, it sounds like you're angry. And she just thought that was the funniest thing. And she said, when you all talk to each other, you sound like you're singing. And we just laughed. And that came to represent that the ability to share, to engage, to celebrate the diversity, the differences. And I think that has stayed with me, understanding that that chaos really was just me needing to open my mind. That situation. It was just a beautiful thing. So I think it stayed with me my whole life, and it's informed how I approach the world today. So I just wanted to share that chaos story with you guys. But we all have that eye-opening experience.
Oh. We're going to get this right. Okay. All right. Thank you, Gloria, for sharing that story. It was wonderful. So we commonly think of chaos as like this state of confusion, uncertainty of the future. I'm reading some of what we wrote in the chat. Disorganization, a free-for-all, like the primeval elements swirling around and creating this swirl of chaos. But that definition of chaos is not relatively new, but kind of new in the scale of how long humans have been around. The Greeks defined chaos as emptiness, as a void of just space. And so I'd like to think about Chaos, the goddess actually. Chaos was a goddess who was born of the original separation between heaven and earth. Now, Chaos' father was Kronos, who was the primordial god of time, and Chaos's mother was Ananke, who is the primordial goddess of necessity, of compulsion, and of inevitability. And that is who chaos came from. And I think it's important to think about that, because when we think about what chaos is composed of, it's composed of time and necessity. And if we think about, what is necessary about the chaos at this time in my life happening right now, what is the necessity? I'm gonna excuse me for that. What is the necessity about the chaos at this time in my life? And that is a question that we'll be thinking about throughout this evening. In one mythic tradition, Kronos and Ananke were serpent deities, and they were part of the origin story. So when their serpent tails went around the cosmic egg, it split open and brought forth the earth, the sea, and the heavens. So chaos filled that gap between what they call the bright mist of ethers, of heavenly ethers, and the floor of the earth. And tonight we're going to look at what it means to be in that gap, and how might we thrive in this space between heaven and earth. So I came across this really interesting Instagrammer. Her name is Gabriela Roja. And she tells the story. She has an Instagram account called My Happy Explorer. And she tells the story of the birth, that this long awaited, much longed for birth of her son. And prior to her having this baby, she was always checking in with her mother, like, what does it mean to be a good parent? How can I be organized? How can I, you know, be a perfect parent? And all these questions. And her mother was telling her how to go about all this. And so she was pretty much in shock as her baby got a little older, because he just had this very chaotic life, and he just wreaked havoc wherever he went in the house. And it was very frustrating for her, because she wanted her house to be orderly. She wanted things to look nice. And she was frustrated. She got depressed. She was stressed out in trying to deal with all this chaoticness. She wondered, kind of like the point for her was, she wondered how she could embrace this new phase of her life without feeling like she was losing herself in all of this. She felt distant from her son. She didn't understand her son. It was so completely the opposite of how she thought, which was very orderly and organized way. So what she did was really something that we're going to talk about, even kind of expand upon tonight. She actually stepped into the chaos. She stepped into the chaos, just stood there and observed her son. So in this process, she remembered that somebody had told her that when things get hard or difficult, there's always something to smile about. So she thought, she's going to step into this chaotic space and look for the hidden smile among the chaos. So, and that's when she started this project called My Happy Explorer, and started posting Instagram posts about what she discovered. And this is what she discovered. She discovered that when her son was in a chaotic room, which she felt was a chaotic room, that he wasn't judging himself, and he wasn't judging anyone else or anything else. He was totally absorbed in the present, in the now. And he wasn't asking himself questions like she was, like, why aren't my Legos color coordinated, or why aren't my blocks in the proper spot? Instead, he was very calm, and he would just be like walking around the room, and he'd pick something up that was interesting to him, and he'd look at it, and he'd move over to something else, and then he'd start playing. And he was playing without any kind of plan, without any kind of instructions. And he just started exploring different ideas until he came up with new and creative ways of doing things. And this just blew her away, coming from her organized, way of thinking. When she experienced this creative thinking process of her son in what appeared to her to be chaos, she actually stopped seeing it as chaos and began seeing it as magic. She was really inspired by his ability to just be in that chaotic space, which she termed chaos, to explore opportunities, to fail and then start again, and to ask for help. And something happened when she started connecting with this magical aspect in her son. She started connecting with that magical aspect in herself as well. So this thought process for her was just like a blooming flower. It was like this opening up of this inner creativity in herself that really, honestly, she felt was long gone. She had had a traumatic experience earlier, and she kind of shut that part of herself off. So this was really just a wonderful thing for her. And she readily let go of this narrow view of chaos that she had. And what she saw with that narrow view was that it was very much a reflection of her need to be perfect, to be in control, and of other people's expectations of her, what she thought people thought that how she should be, how her house should look, how her son should behave. And so when she let go of that view, professionally, she started to become steadier in chaotic situations at work. And personally, like I said before, it helped her to dive deeper into that inner artist in herself. And she just kind of followed her son's lead. She explored opportunities. She sometimes failed and started again, and she asked questions, asked for help.
So that's interesting. So, what she was doing was, as Lori mentioned when she was speaking, she's like what she termed chaos. Because once she shifted her perspective, she realized that this was just information that was coming at her. And she decided to use that to develop herself and her relationship with others, but her son in particular. So part of when we want to learn about chaos, when we want to see how it's going to present in our lives, is we have to look at the perspective, shift our perspective about it. And thinking about this is a lot like stress. So there's been so many studies on stress, and stress and chaos are, close partners together. So it's poignant, I guess. It's relative here, in that it's known that when people look at stress as a healthy, dynamic part of themselves, it doesn't affect their wellness, their health. When people look at, no matter how much stress they have, little stress, perceived stress, like a little stress, or if they're moving, a new job and all that, if they look at it as good for them, it's going to take them through to the next space, then it is health. It doesn't affect their health parameters like heart rate and stuff like that. But when they look at it as like detrimental, like a bad thing, then even again, no matter how much stress they have, it does affect their health in a negative way. And chaos is a lot like that. Chaos, if we look at it in a way that it can be a magnifying glass and it can illuminate areas that we aren't seeing, and that it can show us this creative wellspring that's available to us, then it can work and expand us for our betterment. So one of the first things we need to do when we're trying in a chaotic situation, we need to step back and shift our perspective about it. And shift our perspective, not just about the situation. That's not quite what I'm saying. It's about of chaos, shifting our perspective of chaos. So once we are in that space of shifting perspective, then we can go into trying to understand chaos. And sometimes it helps when you're trying to understand something to figure out like its origin. Where is it coming from? And with chaos, it can come from a lot of places. Like it can be external, meaning, for example, here, our current state of world affairs, the pandemic, we have an election coming, all those things could be viewed as chaotic. They could be external forces. It could be internal. It could be in our own internal dialogue that we create this chaos. Like, I want to get this done. I want to, get this completed. I have all these tasks on my hands. And I want to make sure I do well in whatever it is I'm doing. I have this high expectation. It could be a culmination of a variety of things that happen that normally alone wouldn't be such a chaotic thing, but they all come together and they cause this chaos in your life. And it could be just one thing that maybe has been lying low, but for some reason, circumstances have caused it to rise to this, come under the chaotic banner and become chaos because you're swimming in something that you're not sure how to handle, and it's causing you to kind of be small. So it's good to know where it's coming from, so you get a better understanding of how to navigate chaos. And then part of that understanding is, okay, I'm working on my slides here. A shifting perspective. And part of the understanding is asking questions. Of course, you know, if you guys have been with us at all, we're big about creating relationship with certain situations, digging down and asking questions and getting intimate so that we can understand better. And some of the questions that might be relevant for in this situation would be, am I deriving value from this situation? Have I created this chaos because I feel a sense of value? Maybe I'm afraid to upset the apple cart. Maybe I'm afraid to rock the boat. And so I'm leaving this chaos, this situation state that is chaotic for me. And am I avoiding my own truth of what I really want? So sometimes we create environments so that we can avoid and not have to actually step into our power and claim and work towards our betterment. It can be perceived as just easier. So asking these questions will help understand why there's chaos. And then this seemed to be common, you know, it is for me, is this about my need to control a situation? Did I create this chaos so then I can control the chaos and create this sense of, you know, that I'm in control around it? So those are the three things. We have to shift our perspective about the chaos. We have to create more of a relationship with it so we can understand it. And then once we do that, the next thing we can do is now, okay, one thing we need to do is to remember that when we create this understanding, that the chaos that is we have around us or in us is really a reflection of what is going on in our inside of us, and that we have an opportunity to address that chaos and open the path for new responses and understanding. And so once we have these ideas in place and we've got our hands around why that chaos is there, how it became, then we can choose to respond versus being in a reactive state. And when we do that, what happens is the road opens and the creative wellspring, like our frazzled mother in the example above, you know, when we were talking, that creative wellspring is in us, and we can choose other ways of viewing and handling the situations.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So the next thing we'd like to talk about are steps to understand the chaos. And I like this idea of steps because I like this idea of Gabriela Roa stepping into the chaos or stepping into the eye of the hurricane and just standing there and observing what was going on. And being able to see, you know, chaos in a different light. Well, part of the problem when we're faced with chaos is that we are reacting to everything at once. The swirl of, you know, all these things right in front of us, dropping in front of us, and we don't know where to begin. So we'd like to suggest that we just begin with noticing our breath. Just that one simple thing is to breathe, to let that seep into your whole body, to let it ground you. And that is just a great starting point, just to breathe when you're in this swirl of chaos. And also to think about that we're actually in a relationship with chaos. We're in this relationship with chaos that's surrounding us. And it's there for a reason. There's a necessity of why this chaos is happening at this particular time, that it's born of time and necessity. And it can be an ally. We can shift our perspective and see it as an ally to help us along in the process of our betterment. So like Gabriela and her son, we can explore opportunities Susan said in 500 BC, in the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. Chaos is this wonderful, fertile ground. And if we can be open to that distilling ability of chaos, then we can be open to allowing growth in those areas that we need it the most. Chaos is illuminating those areas that we need to check in and say, what is happening here? What's going on with me? And one way we can do this is like Gabriella, we can be curious and we can be observant of that chaos that's surrounding us. So what is it that we notice in our chaos? We know what she noticed in her chaos of her son, but what is it that we notice in our chaos? And then what are some new and creative ideas that unfold for us when we take this time to step into the chaos and see it with a different light? Now, some people said, like there's too many projects going on, piles of unfinished projects. So we need to create clarity when we feel like we're in a chaotic state. We need to create clarity around what actually is important. And we need to think about what is the top and the middle and the lowest priority, and even those things that we can just take off the list that we really don't need to concern ourselves with. Like for Gabriella, it was keeping a clean house. That went off her list. She saw that was not, that was a narrow view for her. But this, I would actually physically write these down. Write down what your priorities are, what you feel are the most demanding to the least, and then act on them. Act on what those are. Tackle the most important things first and just go along one step at a time. Make it manageable. So for example, life-changing events like a death of a loved one, or a divorce, even a marriage, even a birth of a baby, these can really throw your world into a tailspin. And I think to take some time to be observant, to make a list of the priorities, and realize, everything doesn't have to be done at once, but there are some things that need to be done first. So my example here would be, nurse that crying baby and let the laundry wait. That's, and then another thing that's helpful with priorities is once those are mapped out, sometimes planning is helpful. So if it's important to you to have family dinners, then perhaps instead of waiting the night of to figure out what we're going to have for dinner, because you know how that game goes, well, what do you want? Well, what do you want? Back and forth. Maybe, that's a weekend thing where people are planning what they want, and then you have something that you can just go to it, because that priority is spending time together with your family and having dinner, and getting that part of the process out of it, the chaotic part of trying to decide what we're going to eat. We'll streamline that. Another example here is, and I love this, this is Gloria's actually, I've seen her do this many times, is working out, going out in the morning is really important, and to streamline that, putting on your workout clothes when you go to bed, so that when you wake up, all you're doing is throwing on your running shoes and heading out the door. That is one way to eliminate some of the chaos and put the priorities in the place where, where your planning is helping make that a smoother process for you. Another thing that our harried mother mentioned that her son did was failed and started again. And so, we can't fail if we don't try anything. this is the thing. But we don't try something different. But if we don't try something different, then nothing's going to change. And there are times when we may feel like we're failing because we feel like we're always in this state of chaos, even though we're perceiving and understanding and responding in different ways to it. We may still feel like this chaos is just overbearing and constantly there. But this is the thing. If we continue to do that practice of standing in the chaos, creating awareness of it, thinking about what is this illuminating in my life right now, reprioritizing, that's the word I wanted, and maybe having to form a new plan and responding differently, the more we practice that, then the easier it will be for us to notice when we're on the edge of chaos, when we're approaching that thing in our life. And it's the better able we are to navigate that before we get wrapped up in it again. So even though it may feel like we failed, that continued practice is going to hone your skills and get you a little bit closer to being able to navigate chaos. And again, to think about it, why is chaos here? What is the necessity of this chaos in my life at this time? Is another way of looking at that and asking, what is it illuminating? So an example I was thinking of is when I was going through my divorce. That's funny, I didn't want to say my divorce, I wanted to say a divorce, the divorce, or something. I hate that ownership thing, but that's interesting. But when I was going through a divorce, I felt really overwhelmed, and of course, very chaotic. Everything was chaotic. Everything was just screaming at me for attention all at once. And for me to look at the whole of it was impossible. I had to break it down into manageable parts and then just start going along and getting those things done. And with time, and this took time, I could see that the way chaos helped me be more courageous and braver, more independent. I could see that for me, why I felt that chaos was happening at that point in my life was these were the things that I needed to embrace in my life. And understanding where the chaos was coming from was really key. It was key for me to be able to respond with new insights about who I am, and especially about who I want to be. Who do I want to be when this process is done? And that was really important. And what part do I have in this chaos? But this process was very much ongoing. It wasn't like, it's just this smooth thing. I failed, I made mistakes. I had to reevaluate where I was at, what I was doing, reprioritize, make new plans and try again and ask for help. Oh, that's coming up. But, and one of the things that was really pressing at that time was finding full-time work. And, again, there was one failure after another in the respect, you get an interview and didn't get a call back, or, different things like that. So it was making a new plan, finding out how to interview best, getting more information. So I just use that example because, like everything, if you've attended anything that Gloria and I have done, these things are lifelong processes that just continue to unfold in our lives. And asking for help. Now, asking for help can be difficult sometimes. And in two ways, I was thinking about asking for help. And one is that we can ask ourselves for help. We can ask for clarity around an issue. We can try to tune in deeply into our inner being and our wisdom and sit with that in quiet space. Another asking for help is asking others, of course, asking others for help, calling a friend to hold space for us around something that's going on in our life, or actually asking for, physical help with something. This feeling of this idea of asking for help to me is really important. I think it's important that we have a feeling of support in our lives and a sense of community. And studies have been done that show that the more a person has that feeling of support and a sense of community, the greater their resilience is. So this also speaks to us being able to bounce back or to rise to the surface, out of this chaotic mess that we feel like we're in, a little bit more easily, knowing that we have that support. And we can find support in all different ways, be it our family, which I'm very grateful for, church, book groups, any kind of, wine tasting groups. I don't know. I'm reaching. But there's a lot of different ways that we can find support. And lastly, step aside. So this, in this respect, we're not talking about stepping aside from chaos, but we're talking about stepping aside from ourselves. Because when we feel we're in chaos, we can feel overwhelmed. We can feel nervous or stuck and even scared. It can be very frightening. But it's what we do next that matters. So it's not that first feeling, that feeling of whatever you describe, chaos to be for you. Let's say fear. It's not that. That first feeling is the signal. It's the call to look a little deeper. It's showing you what needs to be illuminated. And what we have to be aware of, though, is with that first feeling is we can't let that feeling, though, override this whole process. We have to be cautious. We can't let it derail us. We can't let that inner monologue get carried away and start, telling us to, just kind of sit in that chaos and feed that chaos. And so some helpful things to do when you find like maybe that inner monologue start chirping in your ear is to slow down and notice your breath. Just breathe and get that grounding from breathing and noticing and that sensation. And then begin again. Observe the chaos, shift your perspective, seek to understand, and then respond. Respond with those new insights.
So that's great. Those steps are really helpful. It's amazing. I mean, I know we give a lot of information in a short period of time on these types of things, but having steps like that are wonderful. But sometimes I know just all the information can be overwhelming and a bit chaotic, right? Just remember, when you're trying this, dear friends, if you feel that you're trying to assimilate all this information that we've just poured out on you, one, you can always reach out to us. But again, as Lori said, Just go back to that breath. It wants to hug you. It wants to ground you. And you are right where you need to be. And you like are all beautiful where you're at. And that you showed up to try to better yourself with some new information is really appreciated. So we would like to open it up to questions now. Does anyone have anything they want to share? Like my China story? But no, any other questions or anything like that?